Blisk, for example. You got to really play the player as well. But we are loaded into the map now, folks. And hopping onto that Insano cam in the red in the bottom left. This is Azure.
Love the swoop. And over on the other side of the map, we do have the favorite, the man. It is Probe. What a beautiful dive. What a beautiful swoop. You absolutely love to see it.
That's insane, man. He's been practicing. He told us the other day, he was getting a bit of a warm-up on the ANZ Champs replays or his observing skills. So expect to see many more nice swoops over the course of the next couple of days.
I just feel like I know that you're hitting some kind of key there and moving things around, but I would just like to pretend that that's a nice smooth arm movement with the mouse hand or something like that,
Oh, you bet it is. That's refinement right
absolutely.
there, my friend.
Beautiful. Alrighty. Well, interested to see whether we're going to have anything cheeky to start things off, but it's not really looking like it. It is pretty El Standardo. You got the quick expand, one gate into Expo for Probe. Azure's going for that Reaper and Orbital, probably going to drop his CC down on the low ground there if he's able to push the Probe away.
Yeah, a little cheeky there, but he's not going to outstay his welcome as the Reaper is going to finish up, so nothing too out of the ordinary here. And it'll be interesting to see how these guys open up. Azure actually mixed it up a lot against, I think, Pez he played. We saw a bit of Cloak Banshee. We saw some tank push. We saw some more mobile styles coming out. So the world is his oyster here, really. And I think, even something like a Hellion drop, I think damage is key against Probe in the early game because he's a fantastic macro Protoss. So you really need to find a way to throw him for a loop a little bit, disrupt that tempo if you're going to get a win here.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think, at least for the games that I've been watching, it's been a lot of Hellion drops and things of that nature, trying to do the damage. Like you said, we did see Azure go for that Cloak Banshee in the ANZ Champs in towards that round robin. Up against Pez, the game that really was memorable for me was, I think it was the game where Azure really went for that tank push. Well, it wasn't really a tank push. He sort of just macroed up a hell of a big army, lots of upgrades, and he was well within his comfort zone and just moved out across the map and started sieging up with the tanks and bios. So I'm keen to see whether Azur's going to stick to his guns. He's starting to move into the starport, grabbing himself a tech lab as well. So he will potentially go for a Cloak Banshee or something like that, but maybe not. As for Probe, he's going for that Phoenix style, which you said you're a big fan of. You could pick off a lot of those key units. For the Terran, he's got rid of that Reaper nice and early on with the Adepts and hasn't really dropped any of the probes just due to that preemptive shield battery placement. So he's moving along quite nicely, and it does look like Azure. He's going to start it off with a Raven. So no Banshee this time around.
Yeah, I really do love the Phoenix style. I think it's so strong. And, Probe's really good at keeping those alive. So the potential for damage is going to be pretty great. Love the little harass there he did with the Adept early on as well. It's pretty common. Just disrupts the mining a little bit. Maybe get a worker if you're lucky. He's going to continue posturing out the front with that Adept, making sure he spots anything that Azure might be up to. But otherwise, just trying to be a bit of a pest with these Phoenixes, and we'll see what he transitions into from there. We see the Robo coming up, so possibly something like Colossus after this.
Yeah, I wouldn't be too surprised. Seen a lot of the Protoss players in the PvT mixing up the different kinds of splash damage. Seems like, whether you want to go for Colossus or Storm or Disruptors, all can be some pretty valuable tools to be able to do some good damage up against the Terran. Probe dropping a very, very quick third Nexus there behind the Phoenix play, even before 5 minutes, popping that one down. So he's feeling pretty chill. He's going to really sort of kick back, get that economy rolling, use those Phoenix to be able to pick off key units and keep tabs on his opponent while he gets that Colossus den rolling. So See if he's going to go for those disruptors early on or whether he's going to go for those Colossus instead.
I'm kind of vibing with Colossus, not gonna lie, as these Phoenixes pick off at least a couple of SCVs there, and they'll be back for more later. In the meantime, though, Azure's build is pretty nice with the way in which he's opened with the Raven units, very safe, very standard. He can start pressuring a little bit once those first couple of medevacs come out. Obviously, being careful with regards to the Phoenixes. But from here, just a normal biocomp, he can slide into Vikings if we start to see those Colossi produced, and then he's well set up for a big push closer towards the mid game.
Yeah, both players just kind of playing solitaire at the moment outside of Probe, just poking in and out with his Phoenix, not really being too concerned about each other. But as we have seen from many of the Terran players, once they start to feel comfortable enough, they're going to move out on the map. It's two Medivacs, a couple of Widow Mines as well for Azure. So if he places those nicely, he could be able to catch these egg units off. Need to be careful not to be losing those Medivacs to the Phoenix too early on, because it's been pretty key for, I mean, I saw both Azure and Seetha really rely on those Medivacs to be able to reposition into the main whenever things go a little bit pear-shaped, try to take a decisive advantage that way and drop a big squad of bio, start doing some damage on the production. But he's going to start pushing towards his third base now.
And that Colossus comes out at the perfect timing. Phoenixes swoop in from behind, targeting down a few units. There's not that much on the ground for Probe, though. And what was left of the Gateway army gets demolished. Yeah, that Colossus has to be real careful. It can get targeted down by Marauders pretty quickly, but the Phoenixes adding so much utility, he will clean this up.
They did so well, didn't they? They got rid of all of those Widow Mines so preemptively, and even though the Gateway army does go down, Probe holds on to a lot of his key tech units, and I just love the shield battery placement between his natural and his third, where he's just walking that Colossus between multiple shield batteries, not really taking much damage on it, and just being able to keep it alive. And the Raven does drop those two auto turrets, so that's going to delay mining a little bit, at least for now. Don't know that that really would have given Azure too much help with the squad of Phoenix being retained for so long for Probe. He's still holding on to those. So like you said, even moving forward now, the potential for damage is there. The potential to be able to catch out drops unless he flies right over the Widow Mines. But he's very on top of that. He's even got
Yeah,
that
he's not
one
going to lose
Phoenix out in
these.
front there.
He's been very diligent about his scouting with them and looking for opportunities to pick off anything that he can. You see him hovering around that army just in case some unit becomes a bit of a straggler, gets separated from the pack, because that's when he'll swoop in and grab himself some kills. And we see Probe from here on out, macro in full swing. He's going to be looking towards Storm soon, and that's when the splash really gets serious for Azure. Oh no! Oh, so close.
Yeah, just the one hit, luckily, but it does definitely make that those Phoenixes a little bit squishier. Now not quite paying attention in time. He's going to lose almost all of
Oh,
them. So unfortunate. We were singing his praises all game long. Surely had to slip up at some point. It's the caster curse.
it
But
is.
I think honestly, Probe, he's done a pretty decent job with those Phoenixes so far this game. Azure now starting to get active on the map. He's got a lot of Widow Mines in some key positions. Going to try and establish that third base sooner rather than later as he floats it over there. And starting to produce some Vikings as well as kicking into the upgrades. Gets rid of the Observer Azure, so nicely done for the man. Macro seems to be on point at the moment, just keeping that army count nice and high, which really did him a whole lot of favors in the ANZ champs. But now Probe moving away from Colossus, for the moment at least, starting to build up some disruptors. He has got the Templar archives, but for the moment, not going for that storm or trying to retain a high amount of energy on the Templars, just using it to morph some Archons and chew through any additional gas that he can't spend.
Yeah, Azure's been doing a pretty good job at being active on the map, even though he's not committing to anything, constantly repositioning mines, and that gives him the ability to pick off bits and pieces like those Phoenixes, which is actually a pretty huge loss there for Probe. It limits some of his vision, but Probe, if you look at his minimap visibility, he does have quite a few units spread out, so he does see this attack coming in here on the right side of the map, and he did spot the small bioforce
Ooh.
going out on the left side as well. Love this multi-prong from Azure. And he doesn't want to outstay his welcome here. The Colossi are a little bit scary. He does back up for the time being. He's trying to bait him into more and more mine hits. Really nice moves from Azure. And at the same time, he's going to swoop into that third base.
Yeah, Pro's been pretty diligent about not really overextending into the mines, clearing out a lot of them nicely. He even had the Observer and the Phoenix in position to be able to deal with any potential death drop that was coming in from Azure there when he loaded up those 4 medevacs. And luckily, Azure, he pre-scans the main before committing to that. So, I mean, he might have been in a bit of an awkward position if he tries to go in a little bit too enthusiastic there. But good to see he's dotting all his I's and crossing his T's. He's making sure that he doesn't commit to any situation that's going to put him at a massive deficit. Now Probe securing that fourth base has been slightly ahead of Azure in terms of grabbing those expansions. He's been setting them up with pretty safely with the shield batteries and the static defense, just making it easier to deal with some of the drops or any kind of pushes that are coming out.
And nice little cleanups here from Azure. It looks like Probe is starting to poke and prod. He's moving out on the map with the bulk of his force, and this is a pretty scary army. Lots of splash disruptor shots coming in, and Azure gets out of the way just in time to not take a big hit to the face there. And a few more Zealots running into the third at the same time. There are mines here, but it's not enough to clean it up on its own. So he does have to pull back this beefy force of Marauders to try and help deal with that. And I think that will probably be a theme here from Probe. He's got the Warp Prism out as well, and that might park itself in the main at the same time as these Zealots poke into the third base. So Azure really is going to get pulled apart here by Probe, because Probe is looking a lot like he really wants to push. He's moving out very aggressively, multiple spots. In come these Zealots once again, and like clockwork on the right side of the map, Probe is starting to move in. He's waiting for that base to come just a little bit closer, and he might be able to get a kill here.
Yeah, he's trying to pick off that command center before it can even land in terms of the fourth base. Probe's already maxed out. He's got a lot of key pieces of tech that he's feeling pretty comfortable sitting on. Continuing to go for those Zealot run bys, doing a lot of damage to the workers, and the storms coming down into the main army in combination with the disruptor shots. Even though these Vikings are ripping apart the Colossus, there's just no bio left underneath that air fleet. And it seems like Probe, he might have just cracked the Terran here. He's dealing with the main army and he's cleaning up all of the workers at the same time. He's probably feeling pretty comfortable here.
An insane amount of damage here from Probe. And it's too much for Azure. GG comes out, and Probe will go 1-0 up in this series.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that Probe time and time again, going back to those round robin groups and some of those games, did pretty consistently to set himself apart from some of the other players in this region, is that he's always got harassment going on in every matchup, whether it's like two adepts running into the main base in PvP, picking off workers consistently, Zealot run bys or DTs in that mid to late game in terms of the Terran and even just some of those Oracle plays and stuff against Zerg. He's always got something else going on while the main army's happening, and that's going to be very, very difficult to deal with if you're not used to playing someone who's constantly being that active and constantly applying pressure to you.
Yeah, it's definitely a hard ask. And this is what we mean when we talk about Probe being so formidable. There was nothing super special about that game, right? He didn't do some crazy build. It wasn't a cheese. He didn't block the natural forever or anything like that. It's more that it's just really clean macro play. And that put him in this position where basically anything Azure wanted to do wasn't really effective. This here is the only attack that we really saw from Azure in that game. And from that point on, he moved around a little bit, but he didn't get to commit to too much. And Probe, he cleaned this one up pretty handily.
Yeah, it felt like Probe dealt with that army quite easily in towards that mid game push that we often do see. I think this was the main thing that went right for us, was just cleaning up the Phoenixes. But apart from that, there really wasn't a whole lot going on for him. Like, he was macroing up and he was, putting himself in a decent position. But I think that the chipping point was just that fight over the fourth base. Probe, he was feeling pretty comfortable there. He'd already maxed out. He'd already established his economy. He wasn't under a whole lot of pressure. Anytime Azure was trying to go for any kind of drops or anything like that, which was mainly that 4 drop in the middle of the map where he's trying to hard commit in towards the main, it felt like Probe just had such good tabs and such good information on what was going on. So it was much less harassment potential for Azure. And the rest of the time he was under a lot of pressure in terms of the main army threatening his bases or the zealot run bys that it's hard to be aggressive at the same time. He's so focused on trying to clean up all of these things that Probe's throwing at him.
Yeah, I think the way to deal with probe, if you can, that's the big one, right? If you can even do it, is to put him on the defensive, put him on the back foot, because you notice towards the end of that game, he's in three places at once, and Azure just fell apart instantly. And the other thing is that even if you can focus on engaging that main army at that point, he not only has Colossus, he has Disruptor, he has Templar in there. There's an infinite amount of splash, and you're trying to uh, deal with part of that with your own splash with the mine hits. So you kind of need a bit of setting up, right? When you've got biomine, otherwise you're running in, sort of borrowing where you stand, and then just going for it, trying to target down those key units. So we'll see how game number 2 goes. We're loaded into Eternal Empire here now, and looking for a bit of a better result for this guy in the top right in the red trunks, Azure.
And on the other side of the map, we do have the man who is up 1-0 in this series. It is Probe.
And folks, as we get started here, I would like to remind you that the B stream on ESL_SC2B has the other match for this group. So make sure you're checking that out as well. It's going to be Seether versus me and Micah, a TVZ, solid macro versus wild Zerg. So don't be missing out on that one either.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely got an interesting style, but I don't know that, playing, I don't know, this sort of crazy style is necessarily going to be tripping Seether up from what I saw from a lot of his games. The man was in some excellent form. He definitely wasn't dealing with any BS, that's for sure. He was pretty concisely winning a lot of those games, out macroing his opponents pretty consistently. So I would be keen to see how he'd match up against him, whether any of Micah's antics are going to trip him up at all, or whether he's just going to be able to deal with that quite easily.
Yeah, time will tell. Because the winners, of course, of both these matches will be playing each other as one of the deciders to see who gets out of this group. Just to note, from this group stage, there's another playoffs bracket with our top 4 to see who's actually going to get that seed for DreamHack. And also, that's where the real dollary dues live, right? Them esports dollars are generally a little bit better in the top 4. So lots of exciting matches coming up there. But back to this game, another pretty tame opening from these two.
Yeah, pretty similar game, which kind of worries me for Azure if he's not going to pull out anything different. I think Probe was completely in his comfort zone in that last game. He was very rarely tested, apart from that initial push, which he was able to clean up. And I think it's dangerous to let someone like Probe play his game. I think you need to get in his face a little bit more, maybe try to disrupt him a little bit, do some economic damage, set him back a little bit, try to find yourself a decisive advantage or a decisive edge early on, because I don't think that Azure is really at that level where he's going to be able to play a straight up game against him. He's going very early for the concussive shells and pumping out some marauders though, so that might be a little bit of a different look potentially.
You're absolutely right. Just as I say, a tame game. Sano shows us there that it's going to be a Marauder first and then into the concussive shells. Now, the thing is, for Probe, he came in here with that adept. He's been hanging out. He's seen his Marauder buddy there in the natural as well. So for Probe, that's got to be a nice little tell. Obviously seeing a tech lab there as well, that he's got to be aware of something cheeky coming his way. And he himself is stuck with this Phoenix style that he pulled out in the last game, and something that he also utilized against Hut. So as we see Azure heading out here already with 2 Marauders going, all right, I've got to get something done with these. It looks like it's not going to be today.
Yeah. Do you usually roll out with a little bit more than that? Because I mean, I don't know what 2 Marauders were necessarily going to be getting done there. It seemed like Probe. I don't even think Probe thought that was a real threat in that situation there. He didn't really overreact to it too much. Just pump out a couple of adepts. Like you said, he's gone for this Phoenix style. He drops that shield battery, but apart from that, I don't think he was feeling very threatened there.
Yeah, the thing with Marauders is that they're so beefy, right? And with the concussive shells, they can kite, they can slow down your units, so they can't actually run away, and they can get in and do a fair bit of damage against the early game Protoss units.
Yeah.
But in this case, he kind of came across the map, went, maybe not, and went home, which is the better decision, right? If you duck in there and go, ugh, actually, I don't think I'm going to be able to get much done here. It's better to save those units and continue on with your build from there. And Azure, again, we're seeing the Banshee here from him, not cloaked, but we'll see if that can get a little bit of damage for him as well. Still quite like the opening choice here.
Yeah, Uncloak Banshee up against Phoenix. I don't know how much that's really going to be doing in favors. I think with the pathing that he's taken, he's going to be able to get that close to Probe's base. Um, I think. Let me have a look if Probe's already got him. He's already got himself shield batteries, at least in his main, and pretty close to his natural as well. So, I think if you're going to be going in with that Banshee, you probably want to be trying to divert Probe's attention with something else at the same time, or it's probably not going to be alive for very long.
Not a lot of secrets here to be kept from a Phoenix style player, and he's going to find himself some SCV kills here because the missile turret is not up yet and the Marines are too slow to chase those down. So nicely done from Probe, getting himself 4 worker kills already, and I'm sure there'll be more where that came from. He may want to duck home to deal with this little Banshee harass. He's more warping in one stalker, which will help poke it away. But just as Azure does this, we see him actually start moving out on the map.
He just goes down there, doesn't fly it away back towards that natural area. He's going to pull a couple of SCVs to do with this push. So looking to potentially set up a pretty forward position here, get these tanks established. Needs to be careful not to get caught out in the open from the Phoenix. Needs to keep the Marines in position, because if he loses one of these tanks or loses a couple of these units to the Phoenix early on,
Whoa.
particularly out on the map here, intercepting reinforcements is going to be a great way for Probe to take a lot of the bulk out of this push.
Yeah, seeing that Liberator get a little bit fresh with those Phoenixes around. And I think this is similar to one of the pushes we've seen from a lot of Terrans against Protoss recently. You get those bunkers, missile turrets, you dig your heels in with the Liberator range, with the siege tanks. Those Phoenixes will be absolutely golden because they can pick up these siege tanks out of the fight. There's not that much bio here, but a Colossus is ready. We've got an Immortal on the ground, so Probe just needs to patiently wait for the right moment, and he may very well be able to clean this up. He's already intercepting reinforcements at the same time as the Probe army moves in. He's targeting down those siege tanks, but loses the Colossus to the target fire of Azure. Zealots coming in from the bottom side, helping out as well. One of the bunkers does finish, but there's not much left here for Azure.
Yeah, Probe's done an excellent job of just intercepting all of those reinforcements and just continuing to macro up his gateway army. He's got a mortal in there to try and break that siege a little bit more. So as long as he deals with the army that's right in front of him and continues to cut off all those reinforcements, it's very difficult for Azure to move across the map with small numbers of Marines that are getting picked up by the Phoenix. And then if you don't have any anti-air, of course you're going to be dropping the tanks as well if you commit to running those across the map. So it's really a situation where, Probes sort of cut the head off all the other snakes with the Phoenix, and then just waited for that last one, macroed up that army, and just relied on those shield batteries to be able to just build a big enough force to take that out. So he's deflected that without really losing that third base, which means now, for the time being at least, he's up a base on his opponent, and the Phoenix are just continually doing damage, continuing to be a nuisance for the Terran.
Yeah, Probe just looking so bulletproof here, and having a third base already established and defending it throughout that attack, he's just gonna kind of grow exponentially from here. He's already taking a fourth base. He's got his upgrades rolling, charges coming, Templar archives on the menu as well. And so he's going to get his dream composition essentially while he continues to do Azure damage with this harass. And by the time he actually arrives with a big army, I think it's going to be more than Azure can handle, especially since, he's still just trying to get that third base set up, that economy happening, and all that extra production.
Yeah, again, these Phoenix are just doing tremendous amounts of damage. Like they must have killed like I don't know, like 15, 20 workers at this point, picking off reinforcements as well. And Probe's just been so responsible with keeping them alive both games and continuing to use them as a tool of harassment and information, keeping the Terran on his back foot while he just macros up and establishes himself more and more bases moving through the tech tree as well. He's even got these observers in pretty important positions, be able to keep tabs on where the army's at. So Rogue's sitting pretty, and exactly like you said, I feel like it's just a matter of time until he feels like, similar to the last game, he's got a scary enough army to just go in there and deal a lot of damage to the Terran at the least, if not just end the game.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough ask. I mean, I think the one thing you could say is that the longer this game goes without any big moves, the more time Azure has to catch up with. His army supply is still quite behind, but his economy has picked up quite a lot. So it's just a question of whether or not that has enough time to kick in and for Azure to sort of get on a bit more of an even footing in that tech tree. And those Phoenixes are going to swoop in here again, get a couple more workers. And,
It's just
this game he's lost 23 SCVs. Some of them were with the push that he did towards the
yeah.
base, but that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's just continual and repeated damage from the Phoenix time and time again. And as soon as the Phoenix sort of outlive their usefulness as we head into sort of the mid to late game here, it's going to just start with the Zealot run bys as Probe starts to move out. So it never really gets easier for Azure. He's constantly going to be dealing with these harassments. You see, just streaming more and more Zealots out into different locations. He's got that Warp Prism now. You know, with a couple of Templar as well, so you could even mix in a Storm Drop or something like that. There's always options for potential damage, and there really just hasn't been anything from Azure this game. At least last game, he did move out a little bit, try to go for that push in towards the third. He tried that again this game, which was shut down. But apart from these pushes, there's no drops, there's no pressure on Probe. Azure's playing from behind, so he can't really afford to invest that much of his army supply into trying to deal damage. He's already on the back foot as it is, and now you're seeing Probe starting to move in towards this third base location. He's warping in a hell of a lot of Zealots, moving aggressively around the map. He's really posturing to start to box Azure in before he starts to dismantle him with both the harassment as well as the main push.
Yeah, Azure is smartly walled off here a little bit to make it more difficult for those Zealots to get in, but they will eventually chew through. You can kind of brute force your way in. He's got the Warp Prism there as well, so if he really wants to do a quick drop off before he returns to reinforcing his army, he can. This is a very fortified position for Azure to be in, and it's hard to attack into as well. But the thing is, Probe starting to bank a bit of money, he can afford to trade a little bit. And I think the phrase boxed in that you used is right. Azure, how is he going to take a fourth base from here? He's going to have to contest that territory with Probe's giant army that he has here, because Probe is looking for that 0 to 100 ramp up as he postures around looking for that fight.
Yeah, and a lot of the investment for Azure is the tanks as well. So really just a lot of the damage is sort of slow to roll out across the map. It's not just that pure bio force that he's working with where he could just, load up into a bunch of drop ships and move straight away or be able to dive straight onto Probe's army or anything like that. If he doesn't have the tanks in the right position, he's essentially not fighting at full force.
Yeah, I think a nice thing here for Azure as well is that he's got a lot of ghosts out. If you get some money EMPs, preferably on those Templar to eliminate the storm, and otherwise, on any bulk of that army, then that's really going to help with this engagement. We see that Azure now, as he's basically maxed out as well, moving out, deciding, you know what, I've had enough of hiding in my base, I'm ready to go. And that is Probe's cue to send these Zealots across the map and start doing some harassment behind. Beautiful EMPs there from Azure. Is this the fight that he's going to take?
You see the storm drops coming in, doing a lot of damage to the bio, but he's just forced those siege tanks to siege up just out of range. Probe, I thought he was going to move in around the side there with a bunch of Zealots to be able to continue doing this harassment damage, but now starting to push forward with the tanks. Still plenty of energy on a lot of the ghosts here, but the bio started to get a little bit low. So as Probe continues to chip down what's left of this bio, if he's able to, the overcharge does go out of that shield battery, which is going to keep him alive a little bit longer. If he could just stay alive here, continue producing. He's even come in with the flank with the Zealots, which is massive. That's the first wave of tanks taken out, but Probe's army is starting to get chipped away at here for sure.
Yeah, those charge lots are worth their weight in gold against siege tanks. He even got close enough for a bit of a storm. Now Azure is going to continue reinforcing here. He hasn't done too badly, but getting these zealots in from behind as well. Again, a bit of a hiccup in there, and this is the time that Probe is going to take to clean up these siege tanks. Once the siege tanks are gone, the meat of this army is gone, and it's going to be much harder for Azure to keep this aggression up. Storm comes down on the left there, and there is so much splash and so much army left for Probe, and GG. Probe will take a swift, clean 2-0 over Azure.
That's just so rough. Like I reckon if he does that push against a lesser Protoss, maybe like one of the lads in the region or one of the other lads from the group that Azure wasn't in the champs qualifier, I reckon he probably wins the game there. But Probe is just so calm, holding on to that army for just long enough, constantly getting in there with the flanks of the zealots and applying pressure to the reinforcements there for Azure, and he just buys time long enough to be able to just break that push. It's teetering on a knife's edge, and he's just been able to break it there. So it's a nice play, and being able to hold on to that fourth and the fifth pace when Azure had an opportunity to macro up himself is just what Probe needs to shut him out of the game.
Yeah, really patient play from Probe. It's easy when you have a scenario like this, the turn's all set up and you start cracking it. You're not losing too much. I mean, he lost to Colossus there at the start, which isn't ideal, but the meat and potatoes of this army is a lot around those siege tanks, those bunkers, and that's where the power of this push comes in, and then you still have all these phoenixes. So, with the amount that he has left, it's easy as a Protoss player to go, no, now's when I attack. And if they hold it, maybe they're back in the game. Instead, Probe expands, and we have this big showdown at the end where Azure is sieging up. He's got great target fire on those Colossi. He's really pressing the issue here. But with the shield batteries, with a couple of storms, and not too much bio left on the front lines here, we see that the siege tanks are running out of friends. So slowly, Probe is able to chip away at this army and clean it up, and that kind of is the point at which Azure gets excused from the game.
Yeah, look,